Well, Richo, we've got the best in the business now. We know that the Federal Treasurer has confirmed our fears today that Australia is indeed in a recession after 29 consecutive years of economic growth. The economy shrank 0.3% in the March quarter as the devastation of bushfires and the shock of a pandemic gripped our nation. It could be the first of three apocalyptic quarters, with the June results expected to be far worse, and then maybe an improved but battered economy by September. Josh Frydenberg pointed out that while we had to wait until June before officially declaring a recession, the forecasts are definitive.
Is Australia in recession today?
Well, the answer to that is yes, and that is on the basis of the advice that I have from the Treasury Department about where the June quarter is expected to be.
So as you probably know, a recession is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of declining economic growth, and it's been a while since Australia suffered a recession. We're talking back in 1991 when Bob Hawke was the Prime Minister and the Gulf War was underway. Let's look at this from all angles tonight with the help of Terry McCrann, award-winning journalist on business and the economy. Terry, you've got Richo with you as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Great to be with you, Chris. Good evening, Graham.
Good evening. I remember that recession of 91. Paul Keating said it was the recession we had to have. Do we have to have one now?
Well, whether we have to have it or not, Graham, we've got it, well and truly. And this is not simply a recession. It's the worst recession we've had since the Great Depression of the 1930s. I mean, this makes what happened in the 91-93 period look like child's play. I'm just interested to listen to you, Chris, about your comments on COVID, because it reminded me of that great quote, there are lies, damned lies, and statistics. And I think we're seeing that in both spaces. I mean, those COVID numbers are dodgy as all get out. And you might say to some extent the same thing about these numbers, because these are the numbers before the real pain started. I mean, this, as you say, picked up the bushfires, picked up the early stages of the lockdowns, and most particularly the flight bans, which whacked the tourism industry. But it's the June quarter where we really suffer the pain.
Yeah, I wanted to make the point about COVID-19, and I'm glad you picked that up, because I think this is one of the reasons why the likes of Anastasia Palaszczuk look at the figures of 365, sorry, it's closer to 35, and panic about how many in New South Wales have the virus. And, of course, this is impacting on the economy as well. However, Terry, the comparative figures from China, 9.8% decline, France, 5.3%, 2% for the UK, less for the United States. Does that not make us, as a well-performed nation, in the middle of what is apocalyptic circumstances?
Well, it demonstrates once again we're the lucky country, I think, Chris. But well, certainly we were in the March quarter. Now, I think we're going to catch up with those numbers in the June quarter. We're going to see something we've never seen before in terms of the slump. I mean, we're seeing it already with the jobless numbers, not the official jobless numbers, but the real jobless numbers. We've got 1.7 million of us on a job seeker, which is the dole, and 3.5 million on job keeper, which is sort of like the semi-dole. Those are the sort of numbers we've never seen before. And that doesn't capture the real damage and hurt that's out there, obviously, to small and medium-sized businesses, which many of them have been destroyed. Many of them are not going to come back from this. And many of them have been really burnt by, if they survive, they've been really burnt by these compulsory lockdowns. I mean, the obvious examples are in the hospitality industry, those small cafes, those milk bars, those restaurants, and obviously pubs.
Terry, when you look at all the way up the coast and back again, you can see that people have got problems. If you're in charge, what would you do? What's the Terry McCrann solution?
Well, I think it picks up what Chris is saying. I mean, we fundamentally need to end the lockdowns. The first thing is to get this economy back to some sort of real reality in terms of functional operations. Now, having said that, again, I think both of you guys would agree, we have to be vigilant about stamping down on any outbreaks of the virus, but we can't continue to keep the whole economy locked down just in the anticipation that we're probably going to get some more virus cases, and obviously particularly as we go through winter. So we've got to do the two things. We've got to chew gum and walk at the same time. We've got to allow the economy to function, but we've also got to maintain very vigilant control, if we can, to the extent that we can, on the viral outbreaks.
So far, we're hearing, Terry, about things like $25,000 cash grants for new homes, maybe even more access to super to purchase those homes, some change in penalty rates for the construction industry on Saturday, which I think is a long shot. We've got to get on with this, because when we get to June, economically, the growth figures will be a bloodbath, won't they?
Well, they will be. Now, let me just pick up on those proposed changes, those proposed stimuli. I'm not a big fan of just. It seems to me that we always sort of fall back on the construction industry and home building as the magic marker for getting the economy moving. That will do virtually nothing for those areas that are particularly badly hit by the lockdowns. The hospitality industry, the tourism industry, and so on. I mean, and the idea of giving somebody $20,000 to spend $100,000 on a home renovation, I'm not quite certain how many of those 3.5 million people on JobKeeper, far less the nearly 2 million on JobSeeker, are going to suddenly say, oh, wait, I'll go out and borrow $80,000 and renovate the house that I don't have. So I don't know that that's actually where you need the stimulus. I think you need the stimulus in those areas where we've suffered the biggest damage, the job losses and the destruction of businesses. The construction industry, I don't think, regard that as the front line of the pain. I mean, the construction industry has more or less been able to operate. The one area of the economy has been able to operate through the lockdown.
Richard?
Well, I know that unit construction continues. Is that the way we go now? Do we forget about housing, houses, and do we look to units? Is that the future?
Well, Rich, I mean, the point about the whole construction industry is we had this economy which has been largely built on massive immigration, massive home building, massive unit construction, massive infrastructure spend. I would hope that we're going to come out of this. One of the positives which we should aim at coming out of this is we'll move away from this belief that more and more people is the magic solution to getting an effective, successful economy. I don't regard that as a desire. I'm not a fan of saying let's just build bigger and bigger Australia. So that I think we have to think about an economic model that works in a context in which we do things smarter. We don't just want to do it bigger.
Terry, what about payroll tax? It's got to go, doesn't it? And the same applies with stamp duty.
Well, all of these things need to be reformed, Chris, but the bottom line is going to be we come out of this with huge budget deficits. And the idea that we're going to get tax cuts, I think, is optimistic. Yes, you're right. We need them. We need tax reform. We need really fundamental tax reform, payroll tax, stamp duty, a whole host of taxes which are negative for productivity, negative for growth. But I think that it's going to be very hard to actually get the premiers and the federal government to sit around that table, that so-called national cabinet, and actually achieve these things. And all that other area of industrial relations and red tape more broadly. We've always needed fundamental reform in these spaces. We haven't had it. We've had a bit of it over the years, but we haven't had the really big stuff. So I think, yes, we need it, but we need a lot of things.
Has Scott Morrison got it in him for the big reform?
I remember Josh Frydenberg. I remember Josh Frydenberg talking about how he was going to be the one that would get rid of all the red tape. I've heard various ones say it, but he was the one who was really going to do it. But it doesn't happen. I don't think it matters who the champion of that cause is. They always fail.
Well, Richard, if we could go back to your day in government, that would be wonderful, because we had far less red tape then than we've got now. I mean, as you appreciate, the reality of government and bureaucracy is we just add more and more red tape and regulation every year, whether it's a Liberal government or coalition government, whether it's a Labor government.
Yeah, we've got to take that back. We've run out of time. Terry McCrann, love your insights, in particular what we need moving forward. I hope they're listening to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Great to talk to you.